Welcome everyone to Into the Paradox. I'm your host Peter, and today we're stepping into an area that truly blurs the lines between folklore, the unexplained, and cutting-edge science. We're going to talk about shadow people, those fleeting, often terrifying apparitions people report seeing, and a connection that might genuinely surprise you, their link to dementia. With me today, I have our brilliant panel. Anastasia, our resident researcher and historian, Jordan, professor of psychology and psychopathy, and Tom, our specialist in all things occult and true crime. Welcome, team.
Thanks, Peter. It's a fascinating topic, especially from a historical perspective. The idea of shadowy figures, or what some cultures might call night walkers or spirits of the periphery, goes back centuries. You find tales of indistinct forms, often seen just out of direct sight, in various mythologies.
Yeah, and that's the thing, isn't it? For so long, shadow people have been firmly planted in the supernatural realm. There are urban legends, ghost stories, sometimes even attributed to demonic forces or interdimensional beings. In some occult practices, they're thought to be manifestations of negative energy or thought forms. And you see them pop up in true crime too, where witnesses or even perpetrators sometimes claim to see figures that influence them, though that's usually attributed to psychosis or drug use. But this dementia angle, that's something else entirely.
It really is, Tom, and it's where the paradox truly deepens. For decades, psychology and neuroscience have been trying to understand what people are experiencing when they report these sightings. And while there are certainly cases linked to acute psychosis, sleep paralysis, or even just pareidolia, seeing faces in patterns, there's a very strong, often overlooked, and deeply poignant connection to neurological decline, specifically certain types of dementia.
Jordan, when you say shadow people and dementia are strongly connected, it probably sounds counterintuitive to many. We usually think of memory loss with dementia. Can you elaborate on what exactly is happening?
Absolutely, Peter. It primarily boils down to visual hallucinations and visual misinterpretations. In dementia, the brain's ability to process and interpret visual information starts to break down. It's not just a memory issue, it's a sensory processing issue, among many others. So when someone with dementia reports seeing a shadow person, they're often experiencing a genuine visual hallucination, seeing something that isn't actually there, or a severe visual illusion where they misinterpret something real, like a coat on a chair, as a person.
So it's almost like the brain is trying to make sense of incomplete or distorted information, and it fills in the blanks with something that feels familiar but isn't real?
Exactly, Anastasia. Think of it like a faulty projection system. The input is garbled, and the brain, in its attempt to create a coherent image, sometimes renders something vague, fleeting, often human-like, usually in their peripheral vision. These shadow people are incredibly common descriptions of visual hallucinations, particularly in a specific type of dementia called Lewy body dementia, or LBD.
Lewy body dementia. I've heard that mentioned in passing, usually in relation to Parkinson's. Is it that prevalent for visual hallucinations?
It's a core diagnostic feature, Tom. Visual hallucinations are much more common and tend to appear earlier in LBD and Parkinson's disease dementia, which are on the same spectrum, essentially, than in, say, Alzheimer's disease. In LBD, these hallucinations can be incredibly vivid. We're talking about seeing children, animals, or even fully formed people sitting in a chair. But often, they start as these indistinct, shadowy figures. It's truly heartbreaking for the individuals experiencing them and their caregivers.
That's a profound distinction. So it's not just a general dementia symptom. It's particularly pronounced in LBD. What about other dementias? Can they also cause this?
They can, Peter, but less frequently and typically later in the disease progression for something like Alzheimer's. Other forms of dementia might also lead to hallucinations, especially as the disease advances or if there are other contributing factors at play. But when you hear shadow people and visual disturbances described vividly, LBD should always be a primary consideration for medical professionals.
It makes me wonder how many historical accounts of apparitions or specters might actually have been instances of individuals experiencing these kinds of symptoms. Before we had the medical understanding, it would have been so easy, almost natural, to attribute it to the supernatural, wouldn't it?
Absolutely, Anastasia. Imagine a village elder, revered for their wisdom, suddenly starts seeing these figures. It wouldn't be seen as an illness, it would be seen as a spiritual gift or perhaps a curse, a sign they're communing with the other side. The line is so incredibly fine, and in many ways, the psychological explanation is almost scarier, isn't it? The idea that your own mind is creating these terrifying illusions.
That's a chilling thought, Tom. And Jordan, you mentioned contributing factors. What makes these experiences more likely or more intense for someone with dementia?
Several things, Peter. One of the biggest culprits is lighting. Dim lighting, especially as evening approaches, can really exacerbate both hallucinations and misinterpretations. There's a phenomenon called sundowning, where confusion and agitation worsen in the late afternoon or evening. Shadows become more pronounced, harder to decipher, and the brain struggles more under these conditions.
So the very conditions that lend themselves to ghost stories, Dusk, dim light, isolation are also the conditions that exacerbate these medical symptoms. That's a powerful parallel.
Precisely, beyond lighting, fatigue and confusion play a huge role. As the day progresses, individuals with dementia become more tired and their cognitive function declines further, making these experiences more likely. Then there are medications. Certain sedatives, pain medications, or even some Parkinson medications can cause or worsen hallucinations.
It's like a perfect storm of vulnerability then. Their internal world is shifting and external triggers just amplify it. It makes you realize how fragile our perception of reality really is.
It truly is, Tom. And let's not forget sensory impairment. Poor vision or hearing can make it even harder for the brain to get accurate information about the environment. If your eyes aren't sending clear signals, your brain is more likely to guess or fill in the blanks incorrectly. And finally, acute illness or delirium. Things like a urinary tract infection, dehydration, or other acute medical conditions can cause a temporary state of delirium, which often includes marked confusion and vivid hallucinations, on top of existing dementia. So sometimes these sudden onset shadow people sightings can be a red flag for a treatable medical issue.
That's incredibly important for caregivers to know. So if someone is experiencing this, whether it's a loved one or perhaps even themselves, what's the first step? It sounds terrifying.
The absolute first step is a medical evaluation. This is crucial. A doctor needs to assess the person to identify the specific type of dementia, as that guides treatment. More importantly, they need to rule out treatable causes like infections. UTIs are a huge one. Dehydration or medication side effects. Sometimes simply adjusting medication or treating an infection can significantly reduce these symptoms.
So what might seem like a deeply unsettling, perhaps even spiritual experience, could actually be a call for a basic medical checkup.
Precisely, and beyond medical treatment, there are environmental adjustments that can help. Improving lighting, especially in the evenings, can make a huge difference. Using nightlights. Reducing reflections, sometimes a mirror or a shiny surface can be misinterpreted as a figure. Removing clutter can also simplify the environment, reducing potential triggers for misinterpretations.
It's about bringing order back to a chaotic sensory world then, removing ambiguity where the brain is struggling to cope. In a way, it's demystifying the supernatural experience by understanding its very real, very human roots. And on a human level, how do you respond to someone who is clearly distressed by seeing these figures? It must be incredibly frightening for them.
That's probably the hardest part for caregivers, Peter. The key is reassurance and validation without necessarily validating the hallucination itself. You approach them calmly. You can say something like, "I see you're scared by what you're seeing," or "I know it's frightening for you." You validate their feelings, their terror, their distress, but you don't have to agree that the shadow person is real. You can gently say, "I don't see anything there right now, but I know it's upsetting for you." Redirect their attention, offer a warm drink, put on some calming music. The goal is to reduce their anxiety, not to argue with their perception of reality.
That takes immense empathy and patience, knowing that what they're experiencing is profoundly real to them, even if it's not objectively present.
And it makes you think about how many people throughout history might have been dealing with this in isolation, without understanding, only to have their experiences labeled as madness or supernatural encounters. The fear must have been immense, especially when coupled with the societal stigma.
It's truly a humbling perspective. So in summary, what we're talking about today is that the terrifying phenomenon of shadow people isn't just a spooky tale or a sign of an otherworldly presence. While those cultural interpretations have their place, there's a significant medically recognized connection to neurological conditions, especially Lewy body dementia. It's a symptom that warrants serious medical attention and empathetic care.
Absolutely. It's a call to action for families and caregivers to seek professional help. Early diagnosis and appropriate management can make a world of difference in the quality of life for someone experiencing these symptoms.
And it reminds us of the power of context, how our understanding of a phenomenon changes drastically when viewed through a different lens, from myth to medicine.
And it definitely puts a new spin on what we consider paranormal. Sometimes the scariest things are those that originate within us, not outside us.
Well said, Tom. This has been a deeply enlightening and truly paradoxical discussion. My thanks to Anastasia, Jordan, and Tom for shedding so much light on such a complex and often frightening topic. For anyone listening, if this discussion resonates with experiences you or a loved one are having, please reach out to a medical professional. Understanding is the first step towards help. Until next time on Into the Paradox, keep questioning, keep learning, and stay curious.